for the Landscape Success Program, Using Irrigation Wisely. I'm Rochelle Levan, the Landscape Success Program Chair with the Fort Bend County Master Gardeners. Our online program was created by the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in Fort Bend County, along with the Fort Bend County Master Gardeners, to help you create and maintain beautiful home landscapes. All registrants who have registered for the class will receive a follow-up email with a recording of the class, as well as links to any websites or resources our presenter may refer to. A QR code will also be included in the follow-up email, as well as at the end of our presentation. We ask that you please be sure to fill out the survey, as we do use the feedback to prepare and improve our future classes. During the class, if you do have any questions, please enter them in the group chat. Questions will be answered either during the presentation or at the end of class. Our presenter will either stop and ask if we have any questions, or we'll wait till the end. Also, we just want to note that if there are any disruptions in the group chat, we will remove that person and proceed to delete any inappropriate comments. So bear with us if that does occur. So today I have the pleasure of welcoming our presenter, Paul DeBroy. Paul DeBroy has been a master gardener since 2023. He's enjoyed gardening and trying to make things grow in homes he's owned in Connecticut, North Carolina, McKinney, Texas, and since 2013 in Fulshire. Paul enjoys growing ornamentals, herbs, container plants, and succulents. He's a big fan of drip irrigation and a lifelong composter. Recently, he's begun growing blueberries in containers. Paul is married with 2 young adult children, and when not participating in Master Gardener activities, he enjoys camping, Texas beaches, saltwater fishing, and visiting Texas state parks. He's currently employed by Academy Sports and Outdoors. So, Paul, the stage is yours.
Great. All right. Thanks, Rochelle. As she mentioned, I'm Paul DeBroy, and I'll be taking you through the presentation today. We will stop midway to take some questions, and then we'll answer some at the end as well. The presentation is scheduled to go an hour and a half, but I think we'll be done closer to an hour. So this is a good week to have a class on irrigation, since we've only recently begun to have some significant rainfall in Fort Bend County after a very dry winter and dry early spring. Now, for those on the call today, the proper setting for your irrigation controller this week would be off. And this is the 4th class in the Landscape Success Series. If you attended the first class in the series in January, Growing a Great Lawn, you may remember there was a brief discussion on irrigation, and we'll expand on that today. And just a reminder that next Saturday, Fort Bend Master Gardeners will be hosting their 2nd annual butterfly celebration. The event will also include a station dedicated to irrigation. So if you have free time next Saturday, we'd love to see you there. And the gardens are located on Ban Road in Rosenberg at the address you see there below. If you're new to Texas and you own or rent a home, you'll most likely need some form of irrigation during the peak summer months to maintain your landscape. And if you're in a master plan community, this becomes even more important in order to meet your local HOA rules. With that in mind, Texas continues to face challenges of a growing population and potential water use outpacing the replacement of that supply. The Texas Water Development Board updates their water plan every 5 years. The most recent plan, dated for 2027, was just published last week. So I've updated the next 2 slides with that information. You'll be provided with a link to this report as well when you receive your email. So projections for water needs continue to outpace availability for the next 30 to 50 years. Now, as shown in this chart, this could occur sooner in Fort Bend County, indicated by the purple bar in each of the graphs. You may have even heard of proposals recently for saltwater desalinization plants in the Galveston and Corpus Christi areas. So if you're going to use irrigation, it's important to use it responsibly. Now, the Water My Yard program estimates that over 50% of landscape water is wasted due to several factors, including overwatering, inefficient watering practices, broken or poorly maintained irrigation systems. Now, our landscapes must conserve water to be efficient while reducing waste and making the best use of limited resources. It's said that a well-designed landscape can improve property values by up to 12 to 15%. So ideally, future landscapes must conserve water to be sustainable. Under ideal conditions, if you have the opportunity to consider irrigation efficiency in the design process, your irrigation system will be that much more helpful to you. Efficient irrigation prevents waste and overuse and allows you to do more with less. And like a lot of things, your landscape doesn't waste water, people do. So there's four main objectives to this presentation. By the end of the presentation, we hope to help you understand how to audit, maintain, and repair your system, explain how to modify your system for greater conservation savings. We'll review some best management practices and increase your confidence in maintaining your own system. If I was going to list three main points for this presentation, it would be these three, and these will be reinforced continuously as we move through the presentation. First, water only when needed. 2, apply just enough water. And then 3, maintain your system. A little bit more on irrigation efficiency. So peak watering months in the summer are considered May through October. And during that period, water usage can increase 35 to 70%. Now, it's estimated 89% of homeowners have irrigation systems. Now, that seems like a high number, and that also includes people who just have a hose. And then a high percent of those homeowners or renters don't fully understand how their irrigation system works. And we hope to help you with that as we move along here. The average homeowner overwaters, not because they want to, they just don't know how often, how long, the individual plant requirements, how to consider precipitation, how to set your irrigation controller, and how to maintain the system. This past Tuesday, we received 2 inches of rain at my house. And sure enough, the next morning, as I'm leaving for work, someone on my street had their irrigation system running. So some best management practices. If you need to water, start early in the morning. The sun becomes strong after 8 a.m. You really want to be done by 10 a.m. to reduce evaporation. Best to judge water requirements in the morning before the landscape dries out and shows signs of stress. You want to water deeply and infrequently. Ideally, you should only water your lawn once or twice a week. You want to water slowly for better absorption. For non-turf areas, drip irrigation and soaker hoses works very well. And we encourage use of the cycle and soak method, which we'll discuss later in the presentation. If possible, try not to water on windy days. Not always that easy. And just a couple facts that an inch of water will generally penetrate to a soil depth of 6 inches. Ideally, you should check your irrigation system on a regular basis. Doesn't have to be necessarily monthly, but you want to just make sure that, all the heads are popped up, water's being distributed evenly, and you don't have any major leaks. You may have heard this quote before: the best fertilizer is a gardener's shadow. what it means is a little vigilance can help you avoid a lot of problems. All right, now we're going to get into the stuff, into the equipment. So components of a residential irrigation system. So we are going to begin on the bottom right, and that is your backflow preventer. And I'm going to use my pointer here. Here we go. And this is a one-way check valve that prevents contaminants from entering your water system. Next is the irrigation controller, and we will spend a lot of time on this in the next few slides. You have a valve, which controls water for each of your irrigation zones. You have a couple different pop-up sprinklers here. This is a rotor type sprinkler head, and these are pop-ups of different lengths. The shorter ones would be used on your lawn. The taller ones would be used on, say, planting beds. And then we have some commercial drip irrigation and the various PVC fittings that go along with this system. Okay, irrigation controller. This is the brain of your irrigation system. Now, as I prepare for this presentation, as I prepare for this presentation each year, I try to get out to the home improvement stores and see what kind of controllers are available. And what I'm noticing is more and more controllers look like this little one here on the right, in that there's literally no buttons on it. And a lot of controllers now allow you to do 100% of your programming through the app with only very bare minimum controls on the controller itself, on, off, some manual run features, but the majority of the programming is done through your app. Now, for demonstration purposes, the controller that we're looking at here, this has all the features that a typical controller will have. And for visual effect, we're going to focus on the features, not so much the device. So this particular station here, this particular controller has 22 zones. Now, if you have a yard with 22 zones, congratulations, but that is a lot of water to use. So what we're going to do is we are going to go around the dial here and just describe some of the features on the controller. And we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. The red X means off, my favorite setting. This is often an overlooked option. And again, as we go through the presentation here, we're going to reinforce the fact that your irrigation should supplement natural rainfall. And if you don't need to water, then turn it off. Okay, your auto setting is basically after you've programmed your controller, setting it to auto will allow it to run at the predetermined dates and times. The blue buttons here are just your basic settings, current date and time, when you want your controller to start, how long you want it to run, and on which days. If you have a smart controller or an ET controller, and it can be controlled by an external source of data, you would set it to your weather sensors. Seasonal adjustments allow you to reduce the amount of water during non-peak periods. So for instance, May through October are the peak watering periods. Now, if you have your controller on in March or April, you could set it to 75% of your normal runtime. And that would be appropriate for that time of year. Same with after October, if you were to run your system. And then all controllers have some type of manual watering feature that will either allow you to turn on all the zones at once or run them sequentially at a predetermined time. And you can even control these from the app on your phone as you walk around your yard. And as I mentioned before, many controllers now have options to program through the app. All right, so if you were to go out in your yard and pull off the grass, this is what your irrigation system would look like. Obviously, the number of heads, the number of zones are going to vary. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at each of the components and give you a brief explanation. All right, the first is your shutoff valve. You may or may not have a shutoff valve in your system. If you do, it may be buried in your landscape. If you don't have a separate shutoff valve, you can always shut off the system through your backflow preventer. Your valve boxes. This one here has a green square cover. Mine all have green round covers, and you could have more than one zone under each valve box. My system, I have 6 zones. I have 6 valve boxes, and the valve is what controls water to the sprinkler heads within that zone. You'll notice here there's an extra spur, which could be used for future expansion. You could even use it for a dedicated zone for drip irrigation. If your builder or developer had the foresight to do this, probably a little bit ahead of the game. Spray heads. You could have pop-up rotors. You could have pop-up traditional spray heads. These have a flexible type connector. And in this particular system here, they've circled this remote solar sync transmitter, which is connecting this particular controller to an external source of data. This is a illustration of a rotor type pop-up, and then the controller itself. Now, some controllers are designed to be mounted outside the home. They usually have a more robust casing with a cover. Usually very, very specific, and that option would be clearly marked on the controller itself for indoor-outdoor use. Honestly, not sure why you'd want to use it outdoor, but it can be an option. All right, so when you look at the different sprinkler heads or irrigation methods, in order of most efficient to least efficient, drip subsurface is always going to be your most efficient. You're applying water close to the root zone of the plants or planting beds. Surface micro drip, similar to drip, except it uses a series of small nozzles, almost as efficient. Here in the middle, you see a multi-stream rotating head. These are becoming more popular. Sorry about that. And they apply water at a lower rate, but with larger droplets and that allows you to water, let's say, hillsides or slopes. There's heavier drops, so less prone to blowing in the wind. And it allows the water to sink in a little faster. Your rotors, 65–70% efficient. Rotors put out a lot of water, typically used on larger turf areas or public areas, and then your spray heads at 50%. We'll spend a little bit of time here on drip irrigation, and after this section, we'll take a few questions. So drip irrigation is, again, the most efficient form of irrigation. It can be used on the entire landscapes. I have never seen it used on a lawn. The difference between drip and micro drip is, we have some examples in the next slides. Drip irrigation, as you see here, is you have some feeder tubing, and then you have some drip tubing that branches off. You can place that in rows. You can place it in a coil around individual plants. On the bottom right here is more the commercial grade, that red. It's a much thicker tubing. You can see here it's arranged in a pattern. You can also hook up your drip system to a spigot. This is actually from my yard here, and you have your timer, you have a filter with a mesh screen, and then there's also a pressure reducing valve to reduce the pressure so you don't overpower the system. And then on the bottom left is his soaker hose. Plain old soaker hose, attach your spigot, use it in a raised bed. It does perfectly fine. And nice thing about drip irrigation is you can cover it with mulch, which again reduces the amount of evaporation. Micro drip is similar to drip in that it has almost like mini sprinkler heads. This is just a plug-in emitter. This is a drip type tubing. And then you can see in the top two photos here, some mini sprayers. At a presentation I attended, the presenter used micro drip in his raised beds. And the reason he used the little sprayers was it gave him, let's just say, a better sense that it was working properly when you could see the water versus just drip tubing on the soil, which is a little bit more difficult. And this illustration shows that you can actually connect drip into your irrigation system. Ideally, you want to keep your drip system separate from your normal irrigation. You don't want to have drip tubing and pop-up sprinklers in the same zone because you do need to reduce the pressure in order to use your drip system. All right, so next we're going to get into system audit and repair. But before we do, I want to see if there's any questions right now.
No questions at the moment.
Okay, very good. All right, so now we're going to talk about system audit, repair, and maintenance. So now that you know the different components in the irrigation system, we're going to talk about some things you can do to maintain your system. So number one is you want to become familiar with the basic components. You want to learn how to do a manual station run. Again, if it's easier for you to remember, do it the first Sunday of the month. It takes like 5 minutes. And while you're doing the test run, you want to look for some obvious signs. First of all, even when you're not specifically checking your system, look at the condition of the plants or your lawn. If you have planting beds that have a section that looks unusually dry, you know, a perfectly crescent-shaped section of your lawn that looks drier than the others, look for plants obstructing spray. You know, I'm sure when we all bought our homes, they had these nice little shrubs, and you turned on your system and it distributed the water evenly. Well, now your shrub is a full-grown plant, and it may be partially obstructed by that same plant. Misaligned heads. Pop-up sprinklers are easily adjustable. Sometimes they end up pointing in the wrong direction, and unless you're watching your system while it runs, you may not notice that. Clogged nozzles can prevent water from being distributed. Broken heads, nozzles, leaks, as well as broken connectors and pipes. Now, if you decide to use a contractor to check your system for you, irrigation contractors should be licensed through the TCEQ. You can look that up online for the contractors that you're working with. They should be able to provide you with this information if asked. Also, if you run your system either early in the morning or when it's dark, you may not see these problems unless you do a special run during the daytime. So keep that in mind as well. All right, if you need to make a repair, I always say, you know, treat it like a medical procedure. Go from least invasive to most invasive, or easiest to more difficult. So the easiest type of adjustment is when your spray head is not pointing in the right direction. The pop-up sprinklers have a a riser that ratchets, and if you hold the body of the sprinkler head and turn the riser, you can usually adjust your direction. Some rotors have screw adjustments on the top. Next is clean or replace the nozzle. The nozzle is at the top of the riser, and these are replaceable. And if they clog or get hit with a line trimmer, or you run it over with the lawnmower, easily replace as long as you don't crack the riser itself. Sometimes you have to replace the whole sprinkler head. You know, they wear out over time. Inexpensive. It doesn't take a long time to replace the sprinkler head. Or below the sprinkler head, between the sprinkler head and the distribution tubing, you might have a broken connector. I have found that the sprinklers that on the border of walkways or the driveway usually require the most frequent repairs. Only because they're more they're subject to either people walking on them or running them over with a car. All right, tools of the trade. So there's different tools you can buy. If you've ever gone to Home Depot or Lowe's and gone down the irrigation aisle, a lot of these things might look familiar to you. So on the top left, you have your pop-up sprinkler tool, and the next slide is going to show that a little bit more. PVC cutting tool to cut either connectors or PVC pipe. Utility knife. A screwdriver for adjusting the distance of your spray. And then riser removers can be used to remove broken connectors from your PVC piping. Here we show some of those tools in action. Again, the screwdriver adjusting the distance on a spray head, PVC cutting tool, the riser removal, the riser remover there, and then the utility knife. These are photos and illustrations of a couple different varieties of pop-up sprinklers, as well as the connectors. And you can see the illustration in the middle. There's only 6 parts. So when you go to replace there's not that many things that can go wrong in a sprinkler head, but they do wear out. Now you notice in the middle illustration here, you have this little gray piece here. This is a filter. You want to keep that underneath your nozzle, just to avoid dirt or debris from within the system from clogging it. And when you go to replace your sprinkler head or nozzle, you'll notice that depending on the brand, if you look along the bottom of this slide, it shows the different patterns, how far this sprinkler might spray. This on the left here says 12 feet. If it's fixed spray, the one in the middle means it's variable. And I find these very helpful. Sometimes when you need something different than a exact 180-degree pattern or 90-degree pattern. It allows you to fine tune the pattern to match the area where your sprinkler head is. And let me see. So earlier we talked about changing the direction of the spray. So this is the riser I was referring to. And if you twist that, you want to hold the cap if possible. You twist the riser. It's a little harder when it's wet, so you could use some like rubber gloves or avoid a wrench, because a wrench will put grooves in the riser, and it might over time prevent it from sealing correctly. And you just twist that riser in the direction you need until the spray is entirely on the area that you intend to irrigate. On the right here are some different connectors. If you've replaced your own sprinkler heads in the past, this connector on the left might be familiar to you. You notice it's segmented. Each segment is 1 inch, and basically the bottom piece goes into your PVC tubing, and then you basically use your either utility knife or the PVC cutter cut the connector off at the distance you want. This in the middle is a flexible connector, and then this is a swing arm type connector. It basically has two pivoting points, and you can use it to raise or lower the sprinkler, or move the sprinkler. Let's just say if you needed to move the sprinkler head to spray around a bush that had grown. And this is the pop-up sprinkler tool I mentioned earlier. You can use the plier end to pull out the riser, and then you can clamp the tool around the riser, which is on the spring, to keep it in the up position. So let's just say you replace the sprinkler head. You want to make sure it's working properly. You turn your system on. It'll stay up as long as those pliers are there. That way, let's say you turn the system off and you wanted to remove the nozzle, it's already in the up position to allow you to do that. All right, common problems. So the most common is water not hitting the target, water where it should not be. So here you can see a pop up, and it's kind of spraying everywhere. It almost looks like this is a 360-degree pattern on the edge of a sidewalk. I'm sure we've all seen these power washed patterns on fences, which means these sprinklers have been spraying this fence for a very long time in order for it to remove the finish like that. And this looks like a rotor gone wild. And again, all these things are very easy to fix and adjust. The photo on the top, may or may not have seen this, especially when you turn your system on for the first time in the spring. There may be thatch over the sprinkler head, or the grass itself may be intertwined, and it's not allowing the riser to poke up through the grass. First thing you do is you just try to clear the grass or the debris away from the sprinkler head. If it's still not popping up and you don't see any leaks, then you may need to turn the system off and replace it. Photo on the bottom shows a leak of some kind. So this is a rotor, and the sprinkler head could be cracked. The connector beneath the sprinkler head could be cracked. These are usually very, very obvious problems. Also, just as you're as you're going about your business through the year, make note of some unusual conditions in your yard. So if you're walking somewhere and your sprinklers ran a couple of days ago, but you have like a wet, squishy area, that could indicate that you have a leak on sprinklers in that area that need to be addressed. Broken nozzles. Surprising. This is probably one of the most common things that we'll see. I've had this many times. I'm sure driving around, you've seen the same. Again, it could be the sprinkler head that's broken, or the connector beneath the sprinkler head. Now, if you happen to be driving down your street and you see this happening to one of your neighbors, doesn't hurt to leave a little note on their door. Especially if it's at night and they may not be aware of it. This is on the right here. This is a rotor, and I have seen this. Now that I've done this presentation a few times, I see this more than I would think. So these are large rotors, and a piece breaks and the entire sprinkler head gets ejected from the hole. Usually there's going to be a geyser involved there. This is a long pop-up sprinkler. Looks like it's in a bed of ground cover. This could have been, let's just say it got stuck in the up position and it got tripped on, or it got hit with a lawnmower. You'd need to replace the whole head in both of these examples. All right, a tree. Little tree becomes a big tree. Now, when this rotor gets to this point in its rotation, you're spraying the tree, not the lawn. Depending on the amount of space you have available, you could move the sprinkler head just to make sure you have coverage on both sides of the tree. If the only thing that's happening is it's hitting the tree, you can adjust the radius, the travel radius on the head itself, so that it stops before it gets to the tree on both sides. I have not seen this, at least locally, but this can occur. If your pressure is very high, what can happen is your spray just literally just turns to mist. And then what you have is you can see it in this photo. You have this floating cloud of mist moving over through your yard into your neighbor's yard, not really putting down water evenly. Now, if you have very high pressure in your entire system, you may need to get a plumber to put a pressure reduction valve into your system. And then the last thing regarding maintenance is your backflow preventer. Don't let this be you. So when you get to close to winter, you want to shut off your backflow preventer. There's usually 2 valves on it. And on the bottom photo here, you see that on the right, with a little screw there. That's like a bleeder. So you close the valves, you open the little bleed hole here, and I leave it open all winter, just so that if any water builds up, it can drain out. And then you also want to insulate the backflow preventer, so you do not cause this condition. And this type of cover is very helpful. If you're going to buy something like this, buy it in August when you can find them. If you try to buy something like this, a week before they predict a freeze, it's unlikely that you're going to find it. I like to just pick a date to shut off and start your system each year. For me, it's going to be December 1st and March 1st. That way you don't have to worry about it. Once your system's turned off and covered, you'll be good for the rest of the winter. All right, so we've talked about the equipment, how to set and maintain your system. So how much water are you using? And you really won't know until you measure it. So in general, Bermuda needs about 1 inch of water a week. And again, it really depends on the conditions, your particular situation. It could probably use a little less than that. St. Augustine, 1 to 2 inches. Zoysa, about 1 inch. And again, when we talk about the amount of water, that is your combined natural rainfall as well as the irrigation. Now, the emitters, they all dispense water at different rates. It really depends on, a lot of it depends on the brand, the distance it's intended to cover, as well as the pressure within your system. So these are ballparks. But the important part is actually measuring your own irrigation system. And you can do that with what they call a catch can test. You can use, you could use tuna cans or a pet food can to do that. You can also buy these dedicated catch can test kits. And so this is the middle photo here shows one of the catch cans. It has a little stand and a little graduated funnel shaped beaker thing. You spread these out on your lawn. You run run each zone for a predetermined period. You don't want to do it the same for each. And then you can measure how much water was collected in each of the catch cans and calculate your overall water use. I am going to use the zoom here. you notice on the dedicated catch cans, they allow you to easily measure very small amounts. Using a can at the bottom, much harder to measure an eighth of an inch than it is if you were using one of these catch can funnel things. So once you've run your station, let's say for 10 minutes, and you've recorded how much has been captured in each of the cups, now you're going to calculate how much water your system is putting out. And so we're going to do a little bit of math here. And so this is from the test I ran last year. And this also highlighted a couple of coverage issues too that I had to address. So this was I did this in my front yard, and I had 9 different measuring points. And so I ran the system for 10 minutes, and I captured between, let's say, 0.38 inches and 0.09 inches in 10 minutes. And so what you do then, you add up all those values, and that came to 2.15 divided by the 9 different cups. And that gave me an average of 0.24 inches for each. Divide that by 10, and that tells me on average, that zone was putting out 0.24 inches of water a minute. Now, if I multiplied that by 60 minutes, that would be 1.44 inches. So for that particular zone, I would need to run it for 42 minutes to get an inch of water. And that could be 42 minutes once a week, 4 different run times, or you could do it a couple different times to split it up throughout the week. So once you've measured your irrigation rate, now this will help you know how long to run your system to get that 1 inch on average that you need to support your lawn. All right, cycle and soak. So cycle and soak means watering multiple times for short durations. And this illustration here shows the differences between watering, shallow watering and deep and frequent watering. If you water infrequently but deeply, your roots are going to follow that water, and it allows your lawn to better endure drought periods, and it'll create a much healthier lawn. Now, cycle and soak can be used on any type of soil, but it does work best on clay soils and slopes where absorption can be a little slower. You can use it on your lawn and your landscape beds. And so what you want to do is you want to run each zone multiple times for short intervals. So let's just say you were going to run your system for 20 minutes. Well, the easiest way to look at this is just, break it up into 4 cycles. So if your intent is to run your system for 20 minutes, have 4 cycles of 5. And have a break between those sessions to allow the water to be absorbed into the soil before the system runs again. Some controllers will allow you to use multiple start times for each zone. And some really just have a setting for, you click it for cycle and soak, and you tell it how long, and then how much time in between. Meaning, all right, I want each zone to run for 2 minutes and then a 3-minute break in between. So the new controllers, make it much easier for you to do that. All right, so there are some newer irrigation technologies out there, including on the bottom here, there's soil sensors. There are sensors connected to external sources of data. And you may have heard the term ET controller, and ET means evapotranspiration. And these controllers could be connected to a system within your own yard or a remote measuring point or based on historical data. So evapotranspiration, total water loss from an area combining evaporation from the surface of the soil along with transpiration, water escaping from the plant leaves. And depending on the controller and the brand, some of these are signal-based, where there's a centralized measuring point, hopefully near you, that is capturing this data and making recommendations to your system. Some use historic information, which I would consider least reliable because things change so much from month to month, year to year. So historic controllers are using basically estimates based on historic use in that particular area. And I would say the most accurate is going to be your on-site. If you're able to measure the conditions within your own yard, you're going to get the best recommendations. Now, the state of Texas has something called a Water My Yard program. And there's a link here, and there'll be a link in your the email you receive. This is run by the state of Texas. There are, I believe, 88 measuring stations in the state. And basically, the first thing you do is you put in your zip to see if your area is covered. And then it asks you to input information about your own irrigation system, including the number of stations, the number and type of sprinkler heads, how much water they put out. And if you don't have all the specifics, there are some defaults. And then you designate, the day of the week and you'll receive an email, and that'll tell you, based on the information you provided, you need to water X amount over the next 7 days. I found it to be fairly helpful, although the site will even tell you that you really need to pay attention to your local conditions. I believe the closest monitoring stations to us, there's one in North Richmond right off I-10, and there's one in South Richmond. Neither of those are very close to my house. And, when we get that sporadic rain during the summer, sometimes I'll get a recommendation to water, and it's like, water, I had like 3 inches last week, because, again, the rainfall is measured from a single point. Water sense is a designation that the EPA gives to controllers that you can buy if they meet certain criteria. I can't tell you what that criteria is, but I think every controller I've seen when I'm shopping has this designation. And so with that, we are at the end. And are there any questions?
Yes, several questions.
All right.
Okay, are there any instructions or can you recommend where to go for instructions to put this drip irrigation into the yard or install it for gardens and planters?
Yes. And so what I would do is a lot of the companies that sell drip irrigation supplies have extensive websites with videos on how to get started. I didn't mention that, you can buy drip systems, either individual components. So if you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, you'll see individual drip system components. You can also buy them in a kit. For instance, you want to water the pots on your patio. You can buy a kit just designed for watering pots. And then let's just say or for a raised bed. But yes, I would recommend, do a search, drip irrigation, and multiple companies will come up. And my experience is there's a lot of good information that they can provide you. And there should be a number you could call as well if you want to get some specific information on your petition, your particular use or yard.
Okay. How do you decide how much water a certain plant needs to use the correct drip nozzle or emitter since they're available in different GPM sizes? Good question.
Yeah, and I think my answer is almost the same. I think first of all, let's just say a pot of annuals in Texas, unless it's a succulent or a cactus, you want to water those once a day. Now, in my drip system, for my ornamentals, I also have a couple pots in that area. And so the drip line comes up on an elbow onto the pot, and it's connected to the overall system. And I run it once a day, and usually that's enough. Once a day, 20 minutes. But just like there's some trial and error there. And I'm not sure there's going to be a reference that's going to give you the exact specific amount, because a lot of it depends on the type of the size and the type of the pot, the type of plant. But yeah, I think with some trial and error, and again using information provided on some of these company sites, I think you can get some good guidance there.
Okay, next question. Do you have a list? I think this also goes with the last few questions, but do you have a list of the different parts that they would need to purchase?
Yeah, again,
Yeah, right.
yes, there's some very basics. So one, the first thing you have to do is decide how are you going to connect this, because with drip you usually start off with like the half-inch main tubing, and that could be connected to your spigot or through a connector to your irrigation system. And then off that main tubing, basically you're going to have some 1/4-inch feeder tubing, and that'll be connected. Basically, there's punches and connectors. Basically, you punch a hole in the main tubing, you insert one of the connectors, and then you attach the feeder tubing to that. And from that, you attach either your drip line or your little micro sprayer. And again, these there's little tools you can buy that to punch the holes to connect the pieces. But yeah, I'd really encourage you to get on some of those websites. I know one that I've used is called DripWorks. I've been pretty happy with them.
Okay.
And then also the number of, let's just say, if you're just going to use drip tubing, it's a matter of you want to make a loop around the plant, 1 or 2 loops. Again, and then within the drip tubing, you can have your emitters spaced 6 inches apart or 12 inches apart. And again, just whatever works best for your situation. I'm not sure there's any like hard and fast rules.
Okay, and I think that just covered the next question was, which will you talk about setting up drip irrigation for containers? So you pretty much answered that one. And like you said, you kind of, when you hire somebody or you get a company, they should go through that as well, right? Talking about
Yeah. Oh yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of good information on websites that'll help you. So for a pot, the drip tubing for my situation. So I have the drip tubing, the 1/4-inch tubing coming from the feeder tube. It has literally a 90-degree elbow, and the tubing goes up the side of the pot, and then the drip coil is basically on the pot with these little miniature U-shaped stakes to hold it in place. Works fine.
Very good. Okay. Can you apply this drip irrigation to an in-ground garden? And again, where do you go to get information to do that by myself? And do they come in kits with everything included?
All right. What we'll do here is Answer is yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Um, so what we'll do is we'll make sure we include some additional links for drip irrigation in the email everybody receives, so that you can look into that. But yes, again, my ornamentals are in ground, and I have basically a main line of tubing goes. It's the width of my yard. The main line tubing connected to various connectors goes all the way across that planting area, and then I have feeder lines coming out for each plant. And there's always debate whether do you want to apply water directly to an individual plant, or do you want to disperse water in a uniform pattern over the growing area? So a lot of it just comes down to your situation and preference. I will add that there's some maintenance required with drip too. Um, the bunnies in my yard love to munch on it, so I need to be conscious of that and audit my drip system as well. Also, you can have calcium buildup in the tubing, which over time can affect the amount of water that's being dispersed. But overall, over the last several years, I've been very happy with it.
Okay, next question. Someone is setting up a soaker hose to water their flower garden. Should I install a pressure regulator, what PSI, or is the restrictor washer at the female end of the soaker hose good enough?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the restrictor watcher should be good enough. Just make sure you don't lose it. I find it, the restrictor washer basically it might be a hard plastic or a soft washer, or literally a pinhole in it. And you can hook it up to a spigot. You know, don't turn that spigot on full blast. You just turn that spigot on low, and the restrictor washer should be enough to control the pressure.
Okay, and can you also recommend water timers for the cycle and soak method?
Well, I would say, yeah, first of all, the master gardeners aren't able to recommend any specific brands or services. But if you already have a controller, and you look through the manual, um, I'd be surprised if you don't have the ability to use cycle and soak. Um, all these manufacturers again have websites, and it might be a question you can get answered through the website if you're unsure. And I know a lot of instruction manuals now, let's just say they're abbreviated, but they usually have a QR code that allow you to scan it and let's just say get more detailed instructions. And if let's say you're shopping for a new controller, I'd be shocked if there are any controllers being sold today that don't have that option.
Okay, next question. Will cycle and soak work if scheduled 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night on the same day?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I do, and now we're going to get into debate about watering at night. But my system comes on. I try to water once a week. My system comes on, and I just bought a new controller, so it comes on at 3, 4, 5, and 6 for a designated period of time, and that's cycle and soak for me. So basically, it ends up I have 6 zones, so it ends up being about 20 minutes before each watering.
Does the state of Texas allow collection of rainwater?
I don't think the state of Texas cares as much as your HOA. But yes, you know, uh, I'm at loss for a word here, but yes, you can buy buckets to capture water off your downspouts. Your HOA just, again, whether or not you choose to share that with them, they just may have some restrictions on where those buckets are located.
Okay. Paul, can you put up your next slide or with the QR code while we're doing questions, please?
Oh, with the survey?
Yes, please. Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, we'll have that set up. Again, just to interject, if you could take a few minutes to complete this survey about the course, we really do appreciate the feedback as we plan for our courses for the next year. Also, other questions, if you came into the session a little bit later, as long as you were registered for the class. So as long as you're in this class and you registered, you will be receiving the recording for this class. You'll also receive a link or links to everything that Paul has referenced. And you'll receive also the survey. So if you can't get it, if you don't do it now, we'll ask that you do it when you get that also. Let's see. One last thing that I wanted to mention is that we also have our additional landscape success classes that we have for the remainder of this season. And we have some very good ones coming up. We have container gardening is our next one, which will be a very good class. And we also have shade gardening ideas and tips, fall landscape maintenance, which will deal with winters and freezing and preparing for winter and things like that. So, Paul, if you're open to it, can we unmute and see if anybody has questions for you?
Certainly.
We have a few minutes left in our class. So if anybody would like to unmute or add a question to the chat, you can ask Paul a question. We can take a few more questions. Nancy, you can set the unmute for people. The link list, someone just had a question. The link list will be emailed to you after this class next week.
Hi, this is Nina Williams. I have a question. I believe I took another one of the seminars, and they were mentioning that Fort Bend has, they will come out, the city of the county of Fort Bend will come out and evaluate your sprinkler system. Are you familiar with that?
It was the city of Sugarland, not Fort
Oh,
Bend.
city of Sugarland.
Right,
Okay,
yes. So
not
if
the
you're in
county.
Sugarland,
Okay.
the city of Sugarland offers that option. Correct.
Okay, and do you have that information? Because I was looking for it in my notes from the last webinar, but I couldn't find it.
I can see if I can find it.
Well, I mean, I can just call the city of Sugarland, I suppose, but I thought they had given me a direct contact. So that's okay. I'll just call the city of Sugarland and ask them.
Okay, yes. No, we did not give that link or that information. She just Suma mentioned that yes, the city of Sugarland does offer that option.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rochelle. You saved me on that one.
No worries. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. Again, fantastic presentation as always. And I think when you said the calcium buildup, that actually helped me because I've been wondering why my drip, it works. And then by the end of and we have very bad calcium buildup in our water. And that has been, I've been like, why is this happening?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not something you can filter out. You know, even the micro screen within the attached to your timer is not going to catch those, and it just builds up over time.
Right. And then, so someone just asked, how do you clean the calcium buildup? You basically have to change your lines.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you do. You know, again, it may be slow progression. So let's say you may be use it several years before you have to. But you know, if you were to put in a new section of the drip tubing, you'd see a pretty obvious difference between old and new.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
just kind of, you know, just kind of shows that there's no perfect solution to everything. And if you're in an area that has, let's say, a little better water quality, you wouldn't have to deal with that as much.
Right. And really also as you continue planting and plant more or change plants out or lose plants, your irrigation system may change. It's constantly evolving, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, uh, last question, will a water filter prevent the calcium buildup and can it be attached to the system?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think it's that easy. Now,
Right.
there may be some other treatments. Um, I'm not sure. I haven't put it this way. I haven't seen anything that's like real easy to use. I mean, if there was some like inline filter you could use and it would solve that problem, I'd have a dozen of them. But I haven't seen anything like that. And also, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you have if you have a water treatment system in your house, it usually isn't tied to your external irrigation.
Got it. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending our class. Again, I've added the link to the chat section for the landscape success classes that I mentioned a moment ago. Also, thank you, Brandy, for adding Nina the question about the irrigation system evaluation for Sugarland. That is also added to the chat, and I will add it again here. Thank you, Brandy. Okay, thank you, everyone. If you don't mind filling out that survey, we would appreciate it. And our next class will be next month on container gardening, Friday, May 22nd from 1 to 2:30. So we can stop recording, Nancy. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us today.